Hi, my name's Alex Hill, and I would like to tell you a little bit about something I've come up with I call psychological mysticism. It's a form of transpersonal psychology, which is a little hard to define. It's a very new branch of psychology that deals with what is other than the personal or ego and what is transcendental or transformative or um, transpersonal. We can talk. I'll talk more about it later. Of course, it all started with the discovery of the unconscious at the beginning of the 18th century, and gradually over the ensuing uh, decades, this idea of the unconscious has become more and more clear as science has focused on it more and more. Um, so my version of transpersonal psychology concentrates on the aspects of depth psychology, humanistic psychology, and neuropsychology, as well as comparative religion, um, uh, shamanism, and various forms of divination, particularly the tarot. Um, the name comes from Scott Peck, a psychiatrist author who was very successful in the 70s with his book, The Road Less Traveled. And his main idea in that book was that we need to embrace what is good in religion and the divine and not be bogged down or not reject it all because of what is um, the bathwater. He also came up with four stages of spiritual growth. The first stage is atheistic, childlike uh, state of mind, and the second stage is institutional, which is probably what most people think of when they think of religion. And the fourth stage is mystic. And so the basic idea is that if you can embrace the baby, what is valuable in the divine, and not get caught up with the bathwater, then you are a psychological mystic. Um, Here's a quote from Jung that addresses the situation quite well, I think. I'm not addressing myself to the happy possessors of faith, but to those many people for whom the light has gone out, the mystery has faded, and God is dead. For most of them, there is no going back, and one does not know either whether going back is always the better way. To gain an understanding of religious matters, probably all that is left us today is the psychological approach. That is why I take these thought forms that have become historically fixed, try to melt them down again, and pour them into molds of immediate experience. Of course, this is the what he's talking about here, the archetypes. Um, so I want to say that also that there's something fishy about religion. If you look at, for example, the Christian idea of heaven and hell, Christianity in the main says that if you're good, you go to heaven, but if you're bad, you go to hell, which is in essence saying that you're going to have eternal punishment for finite transgressions. But with psychological mysticism, we can look at with through comparative religion, we can look at this concept of heaven and hell through the other religions. And of course, the Greeks, with their concept of Hades, is not much better than the Christian idea of hell, but their concept of Mount Olympus, and then they've got some other very good places you can go after you die. But also, shamanism has the middle world, which of course is this world, and the upper world and the lower world. And Freud, the father of psychology, divided it up into the psychology of people is in his model of the id, the ego, and the superego, where the superego would correspond with this upper world, and the ego would correspond with the middle world, and the id would correspond with the lower world. And so that's one example of how we can look at something that can be quite detrimental, and look at it in a healthier way. And what we're doing for the most part is called circumambulation, which is a religious term whereby one takes a numinous object, a statue or something, and walks around it looking at it from all different angles. So that's what we just did with the concepts of heaven and hell, which is archetypal, that this same thing would be occurring again and again in various religions and shamanism and psychology. Christianity is also kind of glitchy. It's sort of like the operating system DOS with Windows laid over it. Because Christianity is divorced from its past, which was, at the very basic level, shamanism, and the more recent levels, the Greek religion and the Egyptian religion, the Mesopotamian religion, it kind of doesn't work. And if we compare it to Hinduism, where you have a whole religion, you have an incredible amount of sacred texts that go all the way back to the Nagarajas, the serpent kings, whereas Christianity has totally denigrated its ancient past, which would be the serpent religions. So psychological mysticism is grounded in psychology, mythology, comparative religion, shamanism, and biology. Freud demonstrated clinically the reality of an inner world and its capacity to profoundly affect our conscious states. Carl Gustav Jung has shown that this inner reality is archetypal in nature, that is, that it has a structure common to all human beings, and that it cannot be understood exclusively in terms of any individual personal life history. That's a quote from the Jungian analyst and Episcopal priest John Sanford, who is one of my main sources in this. The main symbol for the unconscious is water. And of course, water's kind of a nebulous substance to begin with. So this is part of our problem, is what we're trying to define and examine is is kind of wishy-washy to begin with. But the other main symbol for the unconscious is the dirt or the ground. And so I'm going at it from a grounded perspective, looking for solid ground on which to base my exploration of the unconscious. Um, tell you a little story about undergraduate school. Early on, I was struck by the difference between my theories of personality class and my abnormal psychology class. The teacher in my theories of personality class said that Freud was the father of psychology, and we started with Freud and spent a lot of time with him. And then, right across the hall, practically, my abnormal professor, who ended up being the head of the department, um, said that Freud was, let's see, his way of describing Freud was that little boys want to have sex with their mothers and little girls want to have sex with their fathers. I don't think so. And of course, this is a very gross simplification and not very accurate of Freud's way of looking. Of course, children look at sex completely differently than we as adults do. And to say that, a little boy wants to have sex with his mother is, you know, doesn't capture the reality of that situation at all, or not very well. Um, but this split within psychology um, introduces us to the opposites. And these opposites have been, um, in recent years, highlighted by the actual morphology of our brains. Um, this, what most people know as right brain, left brain, and is now being called lateralization of brain functioning. The new research coming out on it is quite amazing, and a fellow named Ian McGilchrist has come up with a book called The Master and Its Emissary, which is a digest of recent studies on this. Um, it shows convincingly that the degeneracy of the West springs from our failure to manage the binary division of our brains. And that's a quote from somebody about the book. And McGilchrist says a number of the most knowledgeable people in the field have been unable to escape the conclusion that there is something profound here that requires explanation. So, we're going to be coming back to the theme of the opposites again and again because it's very important and something very much overlooked by mainstream psychology and certainly by Christianity and the other Abrahamic religions. But I'm going to let that come out as we go.